45 minutes, that's all. Not a day, not a week, just 45 ticking, slipping, mocking minutes. And no, this isn't about panic, it's about precision. See, when time gets short, masks fall off. The truth comes crawling out of the cracks. The voices in your head get louder, louder than the ones on the outside. Because this isn't about pressure, it's about exposure. What do you really believe when the countdown begins? Urgency. That sharp, ticking thing in your chest that you keep trying to silence with logic and routine. It's not chaos. It's not panic. It's the sound of something wholly getting impatient. The sound of the clock running out on your excuses. You dress it up as waiting on confirmation, as moving in wisdom. But let's call it what it really is: stalling. Because urgency exposes what comfort works overtime to hide, and comfort, oh comfort, is clever. It sings lullabies in your ear while your destiny slips out the back door. See, urgency doesn't ask for permission. It barges in, uninvited, and the moment it shows up, the games are over. The pretending is over. The soft little lies you tell yourself to sleep at night, they burn up under the spotlight of pressure. You say you're waiting for peace, but you've confused numbness for calm. You're not at rest. You're stuck. You're not discerning, you're deflecting. And urgency makes sure you feel every inch of it. Comfort, on the other hand, is a con artist. It feeds you routines that feel like safety, patterns that feel like purpose. It whispers that you're doing enough just because you're busy, even if none of it moves you closer to what you were born to do. You wrap yourself in distractions and call it preparation. But urgency, it strips all that away. It doesn't let you hide behind plans. It says, now move. Go. And it doesn't care how you feel about it. The minute urgency shows up, so do the real questions. What are you afraid of? What have you been avoiding? Who would you become if you actually obeyed? And those are questions comfort will never ask, because comfort wants you pacified, predictable, and paralyzed. But urgency drags you to the mirror and forces you to look, not at what you've shown the world, not at the polished version you parade around, at you, the one who knows, the one who hears, the one who's been told over and over again what to do, and still hasn't done it. Urgency doesn't need an audience. It doesn't come with a spotlight or applause. In fact, it often shows up when no one's watching, when it's quiet, when the window opens for a few minutes and whispers that this is your shot. Not someday, not eventually, now, and suddenly every delay starts to feel like betrayal. Every excuse sounds like a betrayal. Because the truth is, you've known for a long time, but comfort made you forget. Urgency makes you remember. And here's the part nobody tells you: urgency doesn't make the decision for you. It just removes the cushion. It turns the volume up so loud you can't ignore it anymore. It makes you see how fragile your comfort really is, how easily it crumbles under pressure, how quickly it abandons you when everything starts shaking. Because urgency doesn't just expose your delay, it exposes your dependency on feelings, on familiarity, on the illusion of control. You've built your identity around comfort, around the idea that you'll be ready when everything aligns. But urgency doesn't align. It disrupts, it interrupts. It shows up in the middle of your excuses and sets fire to them. And it dares you to move before you're ready. Not because it's cruel, but because it knows that ready is a myth you made up to avoid responsibility. Urgency says you don't need all the answers, you just need to obey. But comfort wants answers first, feelings first, guarantees first. And that's why comfort will always betray you. Urgency is loud, not because it's angry, but because it's tired. Tired of watching you settle. Tired of watching you circle the same mountain. Tired of seeing you shrink when you were built to rise. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets. Until it doesn't sound like opportunity anymore, it sounds like a warning. A final call. And maybe deep down you've already heard it. Maybe that unease, that tension, that restless ache in your soul that's not confusion. That's urgency trying to shake you awake, but comfort keeps selling you stories. Keeps telling you that playing it safe is wise, that you've got more time, that you're being smart. But what's smart about wasting years pretending you didn't hear the call? What's wise about trading your purpose for predictability? You weren't designed for safety. You were built for surrender, for movement, for war. And urgency knows that. That's why it keeps knocking, even now, even while you pretend not to hear it, even while you hide behind one more excuse in the name of caution. It knocks because it knows that if you ever actually moved when it told you to move, everything would change. You love the sound of your own delay. You've wrapped it in holy language, dressed it in discipline, tied a little bow around it, and called it patience. But truth has a smell, and delay reeks of disobedience. It's quiet, sure, subtle, but it festers. Because what you call waiting is really just a pretty little way of saying I don't want to move unless it feels safe. But the call didn't ask for your comfort. It asked for your response. You pretend you're not sure yet, that you're still seeking, still discerning, still asking for confirmation number 15. But you're not confused. You're just committed to comfort. You keep praying for clarity while ignoring the clarity you already got. And in the shadows of your stalling, your soul starts to mold, starts to forget how to move, starts to believe the lie that disobedience can be justified if you speak it softly enough. You see, delay doesn't scream. It doesn't break things right away. It's patient, clever, it makes promises. It tells you that you'll obey later, when the money looks right, when your energy returns, when people understand. But later is a liar. Later doesn't exist. Later is a graveyard of purpose dressed as wisdom. And every time you choose it, something in you dies a little more. Not in flames, in silence, the worst kind of death, the kind that pretends it's still alive. You think you're being cautious, but really you're avoiding the cost. You want the reward of obedience without the inconvenience. You want resurrection without the cross. But obedience doesn't wait for ideal circumstances. It walks into the fire. It signs the contract with trembling hands. It doesn't need all the answers. It just needs to answer. But you're still negotiating. Still trying to find the version of obedience that won't make you bleed. And let's not pretend. You've heard it. Felt it. That moment when the instruction was clear and the silence was gone. And you knew exactly what to do. But you let fear wrap around it like vines around a throat. You let logic write essays while your spirit cried out for movement. You delayed. And dressed the delay in such lovely language that even you forgot it was rebellion. Because that's what it is, polished, passive, but still rebellion. And what's worse, you've gotten good at it. You know how to make stalling look holy, how to turn procrastination into process, how to hide your refusal behind research. I'm just learning, I'm just praying, I'm just preparing. No, you're just avoiding. You're decorating the cage and calling it wisdom. You're waiting for certainty to rescue you from the risk obedience always demands, but obedience has never been about clarity. It's about surrender, real surrender. The kind that doesn't need a guarantee. The kind that doesn't get to vote. The kind that packs the bag and walks without knowing what's on the other side. You're not waiting for direction. You're waiting for safety. And the clock's still ticking. Not as punishment, but as a reminder that grace doesn't mean unlimited time. You talk like you want change, but you delay like someone who fears it. You ask for new doors, but keep leaning against old ones. You pray for breakthrough, then freeze when it knocks. You want divine intervention without personal interruption. But obedience always costs you something. Your pride, your plan, your timeline, your illusion of control. And if it doesn't cost you, it's not obedience, it's convenience dressed up for church. So you keep waiting. Keep building excuses out of caution tape. Keep pretending that delay is harmless. But the truth is, every delayed yes echoes louder in the spirit than a direct no. Because it means you knew. And you still paused. You still chose the familiar over the faithful. And the most terrifying part, You've gotten so good at waiting that you don't even realize you're missing it. Delay doesn't look like a fall. It looks like a drift, a slow, silent fading from the urgency you once felt so fiercely. And the longer you wait, the more you convince yourself that obedience is optional, that time is your servant, that the window will always be open, but it won't. And the tragedy won't be that you said no. It'll be that you said yes just too late, that you heard the call, felt the fire. He knew what was required, and still chose the comfort of delay over the risk of obedience chosen. Cute word, isn't it? Rolls off the tongue real nice. Makes you feel special. Touched. Like the sky opened up and pointed right at you, but see, people love the title, hate the terms. Because chosen doesn't mean comfortable. It doesn't mean liked. It doesn't even mean understood. It means you get dragged into things nobody else would survive. It means the room gets smaller. The friends fade. The applause stops, but the fire, that gets hotter. Being chosen isn't some golden ticket. It's not a pat on the head. It's not fairy dust. It's war, silent, constant war. And the moment you accepted it, even if you didn't say it out loud, the clock started ticking. Not toward blessing, but toward obedience. Toward pressure. Toward lonely choices. Because when you're chosen, you don't get to wait around and blend in. You don't get the luxury of delay. You don't get to ignore the whisper that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and says, move. Now, people think being chosen means elevation, platform, visibility. No, it means isolation. Secrets you carry in your chest like glass shards, instructions that don't make sense until years later. Tests that don't come with answers, only consequences. It means obeying when there's no affirmation, no confirmation, no cheerleaders. Just that sick, sinking feeling in your gut that you'll regret not moving and maybe regret moving too. But you don't get to sit this one out. You want favor, but you don't want friction. You want calling, but not the crushing. You want to be different, but only if everyone still claps. You want to be used, but not emptied. But that's not how this works. When you're chosen, you're wrecked. For normal. For shallow. For safe. And you'll never fit again. You'll try. Oh, you'll try. You'll water it down, shrink it back, play small. But something in you will start to rot, because what you were called to can't be caged, so you end up restless, heavy, like you're out of sync with everything around you. Because you are. The room feels wrong. The conversations feel fake. The distractions don't distract you like they used to. You think you're losing your mind, but you're actually waking up. That ache, that anxiety that won't let go of your spine. It's not weakness. It's the cost of being set apart. And once you've been marked, nothing numbs you right. Chosen ones don't get warnings. They get windows, short, uncomfortable, unpredictable. You won't get a schedule, you'll get a whisper. You won't get comfort, you'll get a command. And it won't be convenient. It'll be awkward, risky, sometimes humiliating. But it'll be necessary. Because when heaven calls your number, hesitation looks like betrayal. And every second you stall, something sacred starts to slip in fingers, and don't think people will understand. They won't, not really. They'll call it overthinking. Too intense, too dramatic. They'll say you're being unrealistic. But chosen people were never built for realistic. You were built to carry what would crush someone else. You were built to move when others freeze, to hear what others ignore, to see what others mock, and still obey. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. The obedience, the sacrifice, the moments you'll be misunderstood, judged, left out. But the call doesn't need consensus. It needs your response. You don't get to wait for comfort when you've been marked for movement. You don't get to blend in when your DNA screams destiny. You don't get to explain yourself to people who weren't in the room when God spoke. You just move. Chosen means you move even with your heart in your throat, even when you'd rather disappear, even when you don't feel holy, especially then. because the weight of being chosen doesn't rest on your feelings. It rests on your yes. Chosen isn't about being ready. It's about being willing. The ones who wait to feel ready die full of potential. But the ones who obey while trembling, they're the ones who see the impossible stretch out and bend around their obedience like metal and fire. They're the ones who live outside the timeline, who bend rules, who confuse the world with their resilience. Not because they had it all figured out, but because they refused to delay. Because they chose obedience over optics, fire over fans, movement over applause. And in the end, the cost always looks cheap compared to what they carry. You keep waiting for clarity, like it's some golden light that'll flood your brain and suddenly make all the hard choices feel soft. Like you're gonna wake up one morning with no fear, no doubt, no confusion, just this clean, easy path lit up like a runway. You really think it works like that, like obedience waits until you feel ready? That's cute, but it's a fantasy. The truth. Obedience doesn't bring clarity. Obedience births it. In blood, in bruises, in blind steps that don't make sense until your foot actually lands somewhere solid you want to see before you move. But it doesn't work like that when you've been called. You're not gonna get the whole picture. You're not even gonna get half. Sometimes you get a whisper, sometimes a push, but most times you get a quiet nudge and a terrifying silence right after. That's how it works when heaven hands you instructions. You walk into fog, not light. You walk without knowing, without signs, without applause. You obey and the clarity follows, not the other way around. You think if you just sit still long enough, the clouds will part and everything will make sense. But stillness becomes a prison when it's just fear pretending to be wisdom. You wait for a perfect sign when the very lack of one is your sign. Because if it was supposed to be easy, everyone would be doing it. You wouldn't be chosen. You'd be average. You wouldn't be pushed, you'd be parked. But you've got that ache in your chest, don't you? That constant unrest that doesn't shut up no matter how quiet the world gets. That's the whisper screaming. And it's not asking you to understand, it's asking you to obey. People think they need answers before they move. But that's how you stay stuck. That's how you waste years. Waiting for feelings to match instructions. Waiting for logic to line up with your gut. But faith isn't about comfort. It's about confrontation. You're being dared to do something without the data, to leap without the landing gear. And that's the part that makes people back down, because control feels safer than calling. But you weren't built for safe. You keep thinking the clarity is going to come from a podcast or a prophecy or some magic confirmation that makes it all click. But deep down, you already know. You've known a while. It's not the lack of clarity that's holding you back, it's the cost. You're scared of what you'll lose if you move. Scared of who won't understand. Scared of failing, looking foolish, losing face. So instead you stall. You talk like you're seeking when really you're just stalling. There's no version of this where you don't have to move through fear. No version where it doesn't sting first. But the ones who see the miracles, they're not the ones who waited for signs. They're the ones who move with nothing but faith, nothing but trembling hands and a yes lodged in their throat. They're the ones who obeyed in the dark and then saw the light, because light doesn't lead obedience. It follows it. You're waiting for God to confirm what He already commanded. You want Him to repeat Himself because you didn't like the answer the first time. You want another sign because the last one felt too risky. But heaven doesn't negotiate. It speaks once and expects movement. And every time you don't move, the weight grows heavier. The noise gets louder. And eventually your delay starts to feel normal. Until you forget what urgency ever felt like in the first place. People will think you're crazy when you move without the blueprint. Let them. They weren't there when you felt it. They don't carry what you carry. And if they did, they'd already be moving. But you've been called to obey without all the facts, to say yes while your knees shake, to trust that the next step will show up after you take the first one. Not before. Never before. That's the pattern. That's the paradox. So stop waiting for clarity like it's a permission slip. It's not coming wrapped in safety. It's coming wrapped in obedience. And obedience will always ask for a risk you don't feel ready to take. But take it anyway. That's where the shift is. That's where the clarity lies on the other side of yes. Not before, not in the planning, not in the overthinking. In the movement. In the madness. In the moment you stop needing all the answers and just decide to obey, even if you look insane doing it. Comfort. The great sedative. The smooth-talking liar with soft hands and sharp teeth. It whispers to you like a friend, wraps itself around your choices, makes your bed feel heavier, your dreams feel optional. It doesn't yell, it soothes, that's how it wins, not with force, no, with ease. It makes your cage look like a couch, makes your fear look like wisdom, makes your delay look like strategy. But comfort isn't neutral. It's not some harmless little break from reality. It's the enemy of calling, and it's been robbing you with a smile. Calling doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door in and demands everything. Your timing, your image, your plan B. And it never shows up when you're ready. That's the joke. You think you'll feel some magical sense of readiness when it's time to obey, like you'll suddenly become brave and inspired and dripping with clarity. Nah, when the call comes, you'll feel sick, scared, angry even. Because calling always asks for the parts of you comfort has trained you to protect. Comfort's clever, though. It tells you you're being responsible, that now isn't the right time, that maybe next month, maybe after the bills are paid, after the anxiety, after you've prayed just a little more. It disguises itself as logic, as caution, as maturity. But every day you buy into it, a little piece of you gets duller, a little piece of that fire goes out. Until one day you look around and realize you've been managing your life like a prison warden safe, structured and completely cut off from the wild, chaotic, dangerous thing you were actually born. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to coast. You were marked. From the beginning. But comfort saw that mark and made you a deal. Let me keep you warm and I'll keep you from getting wounded. And maybe for a while you said yes. Maybe you needed the numbness. Maybe the fire felt too hot, the cost too high. But now it's suffocating. You can feel it. The stillness isn't peace anymore, it's pressure. Pressure that builds every time you ignore the thing pounding in your ribs. You think your issue is confusion, that you don't know what to do next. But that's not it. You know, you've known. You're just scared of what obedience will cost you. Scared of the shift it'll trigger. Of the people it'll upset. Of the comfort it'll rip away. So you wait, you pray, you stall, you dress it up in nice spiritual language and wait for some magical moment that'll never come. Because calling doesn't wait for you to feel safe, it waits for you to say yes. The most dangerous place to be isn't lost, it's comfortable. Because when you're lost, at least you're searching. But when you're comfortable, you stop moving. You stop growing. You stop listening. You wrap yourself in routine and call it wisdom. But you know what wisdom sounds like? It sounds like urgency, like holy discomfort, like a fire under your skin that won't let you sit still anymore. Not because everything's falling apart, but because something bigger is trying to break through, and comfort is in the way you weren't called to be careful. You were called to be obedient, to step when it doesn't make sense, to move when it's messy, to look ridiculous to everyone who stayed in the boat while you started walking on water. Comfort says stay dry, calling says sink try, and comfort says build a plan. Calling says burn the bridge. Comfort says protect your image. Calling says risk everything for the unseen. And don't think for a second that comfort will go quietly. No, it'll claw at your ankles. It'll guilt trip you with memories. It'll point at your failures, scream your insecurities, remind you of every time you've tried and bled. But if you listen to it, you'll die full. Full of what you were supposed to become. Full of what you were supposed to release. And no one will even know it was buried inside you. Just another safe soul in a safe life, slowly wasting the weight of what was once dangerous, holy potential. But there's a shift, isn't there? A crack in the numbness. You're starting to feel again, starting to itch in places you thought were dead. That's not restlessness, it's resurrection. That's the sound of calling getting louder than comfort. And when that happens, you don't ask for permission. You don't wait for approval. You move. Even if your voice shakes, even if your knees buckle. Because once comfort starts to feel like a coffin,